This week on Houston Newsmakers, Houston Chief of Police, Chief Charles McClelland, is making plans to host a town hall meeting to give members of the community a chance to voice concerns they have about the Houston Police Department. What are those concerns? How are they caused? And how can they be eased? Diversity expert Craig Clayton is here with answers and ways to keep such conflicts from happening.
KPRC Local 2. This is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
And welcome back to Houston Newsmakers. Joining me now is Craig Clayton, the Director and Diversity Strategist for the International Institute for Diversity at the Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston and founder of RespectMatters.org. Welcome, Craig. You're doing a lot of things.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
That title's a long one.
It is. Tough answering the phone sometimes.
I bet it is. So tell me about both roles that you've played, Respect Matters and over at Bauer College.
Sure. At the college, since the late 90s, I've been running an institute that deals with diversity and cross-cultural management. And it's really more of a market-facing, helping businesses and industries understand the need to manage the corporate culture in a way that people feel valued and respected. Change is inevitable. We're one of the most diverse cities in America, but it's now, do you create a culture that people feel respected, which is what drove me to the Respect Matters project. That plus all of the things happening in the news of late. Really, when you peel back the veneer, there are some real fundamental issues around not respecting each other, even from the law enforcement clashes that are occurring and an array of others. That was the driver.
You heard my conversation with the chief, and you've seen the unrest around the country. He made a point. He made some comments about the biases that happen sometimes within the officers. On your website, craigclayton.com, I went to that, and there's a section that deals with biases. Talk about that, because that seems like that's key, that's involved in any of the conflicts that may or may not be happening here around the country.
Absolutely, and it's not just law enforcement, it's also within the corporate setting, it exists in schools. If you are human, you have biases. And I was just talking with the chief a couple of moments ago, because I've done work with a number of members of the law enforcement community, intelligence community, and the issue of bias is significant. Unconscious bias is very prevalent, and it impacts you in a number of ways. I'll give you a quick example. Just walk through your mind for a quick second, and if I said to you, two people in a car are riding, music is blaring, and police officers pull them over because of a noise ordinance in the community. Two officers walk up to the car, warn them, but let them go. Replaying in your mind, did you see the two people in the car as two men, two young men, or two young ladies? Did you hear the music as jazz music that they were listening to? Or did you see the two officers as two women officers that walked up?
Right, so the differences in any of those issues will change the whole context of that, potential confrontation.
Absolutely, and it happens in law enforcement, it happens in the workplace. There's an array of studies that have been done on the topic, even down to the degree of children at 3 or 4 months of age have a preference for their own race that starts to manifest at that young an age. Our brains are just wired that way.
Right.
And there's just an array of examples I could give you.
So the whole process then, it seems to me, if you're going to talk to a community or a police force, for example, is it key to just make them aware of those internal biases and how to override them as they get into various circumstances?
Absolutely, and as a matter of fact, there's a term called emotional intelligence that ties into this. And a lot of people are cognizant of IQ and how smart you are, but we all know people who are, from a book sense standpoint, brilliant, but they really struggle with relationships and interacting with people. That emotional intelligence means you have to be savvy enough to understand not just your hot buttons emotively, but the people you're dealing with, and how to now rein in some of those issues when a part of our natural wiring takes us down a path we shouldn't be going down.
Where's the onus for the people who need to really do this most? Are the police officers and people in power most responsible for being able to overcome this, or does the community have a role to play in this as well? Can they also benefit?
Easy answer is yes. There is a responsibility for all of us. If you go back to the schools as an example, this issue of being cognizant of those differences and your blind spots manifests with teachers. There's a tendency even to assume that people have a certain predisposition based on a descriptive that now tells you there's a higher likelihood, so you treat them that way. The issues around economic background of a student versus not having access to resources gauges how you interact with people, how much answers you give them to a question. It takes place in the workplace. It affects me when I get pulled over and I look in my rearview mirror, and as Chief alluded to in a side conversation, if I'm African American and see an officer that's African American pull me over, I might have a different guttural reaction than being African American and seeing a Caucasian officer pull me over. The onus is on all of us.
And he said that that's not so much a racial thing as it is a cultural thing, correct?
It's cultural, and it's also just a part of how our brains are wired. It goes back to that issue of bias, and one of the things I encourage people to do all the time is firstly discern what yours are, because we all have them. Quick example, within the African American community, we have biases around skin tone, and we treat each other predicated on the degree to which we're either light or dark. There's a ton of info available on an excellent website. If you just Google IAT, which stands for Implicit Aptitude Test, and the word Harvard, it'll take you to a free website where you can now take about 8 to 10 different kinds of aptitude tests around your biases. Weight plays a difference. Quick example, there was even a study done that said if you go to interview for a job and you happen to be sitting next to someone that is overweight, when the interviewer comes into the foyer to call you in, it affects the interviewer's perception of you just because of who you were sitting next to in that lobby. So there's just all kinds of ways this manifests.
In the time we have left, what do you tell an organization like a police department? Where do you start in terms of trying to get them to understand their biases and how to deal with those?
Absolutely. Same in the police department and in a corporation. It starts at the top. A lot of bias sits at the board table. A lot of blind spots sit there just as they do at the entry level. But you can't tell people downline they need to clear their lens when you haven't cleared yours. So the conversation begins with, let's talk about where your blind spots are. How do you metaphorically clear your lens? Because for anybody that wears glasses, you get to the end of the day and have a big thumbprint in the middle of your lens. But because the lens is so close to your eye, you look right through it and don't see it. It's the same with the other blind spots that we carry as well.
I always love having you here, and I always feel like I need another hour, but we don't have another hour. But I want to make sure everybody knows how to get you. Respect for authority, all of those things. More insight and information on what we've been talking about this morning. Craig's at the Bauer College of Business at the University of Houston's International Institute for Diversity and Cross-Cultural Management. Also, CraigClayton.com or RespectMatters.org, 2 websites to get more information. And as you talked about now, what are those 3 letters?
IAT for Implicit Aptitude Test and the word Harvard.
I don't know about you, but as soon as the show's over, I'll be going to look at that. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you once
Appreciate
again.
it always.
My pleasure. And you know I know I'm going to say it. Thank you for all you do, Cambrell. You really make a big difference. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here.